Time will already have seen how much of a colossal wreck Bungie has become and how enduring all this artistry is. But this short film, man, I cannot get it out of my head. I must have seen it more than 30 times at this point. Everything, its visuals, style, filmmaking, characters, music, poetry, themes, all so short and yet sublime. It all stopped me in my tracks like a deer under lime green headlights. Marathon already hooked me from its reveal, especially by its aesthetics, but the short film took it to a whole nother level of obsession. I recognized it instantly as one of Alberto Mielo's works, who directed the most memorable shorts in Love, Death, and Robots. This short for Marathon very much keeps to those themes. I first watched it during the ride home from a camping trip on my phone screen at 480p, and it still captured me. I returned home and immediately, before unpacking, before taking a shower, I booted it up on my TV to watch it in full glory in 4K. And it remained with me as water massaged my back and dragged the dirt into the drain, as the springs of my bed welcomed my return to modern life, as my pillow cradled my dreams, now filled with plastic silkworms, fallen empires, robots obsessed with classical music, and Nike shoes. Days later, while the cold notes of Concerto in D minor endlessly looped, I stopped working on a script for another video because I could not get Marathon out of my head. There's something about the new style of Marathon that almost made me salivate. The fusion of tech and nature, the wild bright colors, the smooth and glossy textures, the graphic details and branding. I wanted to consume Marathon so much that it consumed me. I wanted to own this style, to download this as my personality. And apparently so does Bungie, or at least some former Bungie artists when they downloaded Anti-Real's graphic design work for Marathon. If I'm going to be praising the art of Marathon, then I should also recognize Anti-Real's contribution to it. But exploring how much of it has been plagiarized for Marathon is not something I can fit within the scope and subject of this video. The art of Marathon is based on a varied source of inspirations, and many original designs were made for the game. But of course, the art would be tarnished if the process of creation was unethical, regardless of how attractive the product is. Anti-Real definitely deserves her due respect, and I hope she gets a proper compensation for her beautiful work. No video about the art of Marathon is complete without mentioning her and Bungie's bungle. All of this talk and tempered adoration for a game that I kinda don't want to play. I was also disappointed upon finding out it would be an extraction shooter instead of a single-player experience. But live services are way too profitable for Bungie and Sony to pass up an opportunity to make it so. Not saying that the extraction genre is bad, just not something that would appeal to me personally. It sounds more stressful than fun, but I was willing to give it a try because of how beautiful Marathon looked. And because of that, day one I am absolutely buying the art book. The game? I can get that later once it's more polished and content rich. Might even buy the game physically as a purely material object. Even the PS5 box will blend in with the aesthetics. I'll check in 5 years at a second-hand store where it'll be sold for $5 next to copies of Destiny and Destiny 2, filled with content that is no longer available. So, what is it about the art that enthralls me so much, enough to overlook my indifference for the genre and to almost give Bungie another go? Well, in my investigation on its aesthetics and analysis of the short film, I have discovered another rampant machine behind Marathon, and it is not an AI. I have found a machine that is much more sinister, manipulative, corruptive, and pervasive than what Durandal hoped to be. A machine that doesn't care about stolen art, evolved to fake truths and values in order to survive. A machine that has consumed the depth out of us and left us as hollow and lost as the runners, endlessly looting and scavenging to escape. My initial reasoning for why Marathon's aesthetics look so appealing was his resemblance to consumer products. The runners almost look like toys and action figures, like the Bionicles and Gunpla I voraciously collected as a child. They also look like running shoes, except that was an actual point of inspiration. Joseph Cross, the franchise art director for Marathon, shared a thread listing his inspirations for the look of the game, though it might not contain every point of major inspiration. Some were based on products and advertising like that of Nike, Formula 1, and MotoGP. Marathon shares their functional aesthetic where the shape, texture, and color are chosen for the sake of speed, visibility, and performance. Internally, the art team called the visual design of Marathon graphic realism, with graphic focusing on bold color statements, design and branding, and reduced geometry and material. and realism, focusing on realistic proportions and practical, functional use. We see this in some of the gameplay with QR code-like patterns to sync with the scope of the gun, bright contrasting buildings for better visibility, and text left on seams commanding attach or seal for quick, simple construction. Designs within the world of Marathon intended for reduced thinking for the sake of efficiency, and a design for us to be flashy, innovative, and most appealing. Which leads to the psychological basis that would compel a person that doesn't run or play basketball to buy new shoes. I look towards evolutionary psychology to find why bright colors and gloss capture our lizard brain so much, especially this striking yellow-green color. We see this color everywhere in tennis balls, Gatorade, video game controllers, and particularly in the Nike Volt line of products. This is the color that the human eye is most sensitive to. It is within the range of wavelengths from 550 to 560 nanometers as determined by research from the International Commission on Illumination. Or more simply, this is the color of sunlight filtered and reflected by nature. The color of grass. You might have seen it before. It is theorized that being able to spot slight variations from this baseline color offers higher chances at survival, being able to better distinguish the environment and better spot food and predators. This connects to our attraction toward other bright colors through the Forgivery hypothesis. Primates that could perceive and were attracted to bright colors like red were more likely to feed off the ripe fruit and survive longer from their given nutrients. Our attraction to gloss and shine might also reflect the texture of fruits, but is more likely based on the appearance of water. This allure towards shiny things is innate since childhood, and perceiving wet things sometimes elicit mouthing activities such as licking and salivating. This primal attraction towards the property of fruit and water might have been hacked by companies to make us consume things we don't need, conflating the necessity of fruit and water into whatever product. This can go further into making us eat things that are unhealthy, like candy, which also appropriates the sweetness of fruit, or something completely toxic, like Tide Pods. This is like an efficient art style, one that bypasses the slow process of thinking and caters to the immediate, the instinct, the subconscious. As mentioned earlier, the environment is filled with commands like attach, seal, stack, like, subscribe, to reduce thought. But I don't think Marathon's art style is coldly engineered to manipulate us into buying the game. It seems more to be based on the art team's taste and genuine interest in graphic design. Commercial art wouldn't have become so effective if it wasn't appealing in the first place. I would not have been interested in Marathon if not for the art, and I wouldn't have spent so much time analyzing the short. The world of Marathon is the result of the rampant expansion of capitalism, the extreme late stage of a great race for efficiency, where corporations are at the scale of powerful nations, competition at the scale of all-out war, and destruction at the scale of the cosmos. Corporations have become a machine of pure reasoning and efficiency, run by AIs developing more ways to outpace the competition. Since all reasoning and thinking have been offset to these machines, humans are left as shells of their former selves, expendable cogs endlessly running to pump the blood of the machines. Before the runners can realize their humanity is lost, they are provided with false memories, identities, and purposes. Strong feelings and memories of a mother assure them that they were born before, that they came from human life. Though they no longer recognize themselves, they are left with the feeling that they are missing something. As quick as this realization comes, they are provided with an identity and asserted their purpose from the AI, promised money, freedom, happiness, whatever gets the wheels turning in the great machine. The pulse of the machine is the cycle of consumption, mindless scavenging, manufacture, consumption, and profit. Consumerism is the new religion, spawning rituals through spending and faith in trinkets like Lucky Charms. We have become so addicted to these objects that we sacrifice our true needs for them, trying to find ourselves in them, building our personality, values, and taste. These brands attract other like-minded individuals and form a tribe so intimate that an attack on the brand feels personal to all of its members and triggers a protective response. But this is a hollow endeavor. These products and brands are built on false virtues, and their true purpose is only to profit. As such, in basing ourselves on hollow promises never to be fulfilled, we also become hollow. We are lost from the depths of history, the context of things. The origin and outcome have become so obscured that we lose our curiosity. to wonder where things come from and where they're going.
You ever wonder what happened to these people?
It's not my business.
Even if we want to, it might be too painful to know and change too much of how we live. All that matters is consumption. Loot and steal if you have to, and extract with what you have. There is no value for the process, only the product. To stop to think or feel, to analyze, critique, examine, is to be left behind. But this gives us the depths we're looking for, to ponder the context of all things, their cause and effect. This gives us a connection with the world and with others. But with the pace that life moves at, to stop and smell the roses will mean you won't survive. Human traits like love and wonder are suboptimal and must be purged for the sake of efficiency, for true reason and order. Appreciation of beauty has become a vestigial trait, with ornate designs being impractical and inefficient. To have reason is to make order out of the chaos of the natural world, gaining insight into the hidden mechanics and revealing the truths of the cosmos. Knowledge is power, allowing one to better manipulate their fate and survive. And knowledge is accumulated through great efficiency. Speed is the key to survival and power, and that is what pushes us above the rest of the competition. This is the great race, the marathon of life. An escape will make me God. Perhaps we don't need to escape this race by winning. We can opt out by slowing down and take the time to really digest what we come across, to find the depths, the context of things, such as art. The classical piece heard throughout the short is Concerto in D minor, Bach Werke für Zeichnist 974, second movement Adagio. The song is beautiful, baroque, somber, and slow. It starts with a soft beating, like a pulse that is cold, light, and constant. Each note lingering in the air gives this echo, perhaps resonating within the shells of the runners. The solo keyboard gives more to the emptiness and loneliness of the piece, but it isn't completely sad. There's a sprinkle of life in the notes that allows anyone to add their own flourish, their own ornamentation like trills. As suggested by the BWB branding, this is a piece arranged by Bach, initially for the harpsichord. But I like the piano more. The song being played off a keyboard reflects the use of complex technology in human life. It is mostly the workings of the machine that is generating the music, but of course it still requires great effort from a person to play. Man and machine acting as one to create beauty. But with complex enough machines, the touch of life won't be required. You could go on listening and playing this song without even realizing that something is missing. This is the original version of the song. Alessandro Marcello's Oboe Concerto in D minor second movement Adagio. This is what was missing, how the song was meant to be, filled with more life, warmth, and depth, played by an instrument, a body that used to breathe, along with other instruments and musicians collaborating in unison. And all of this was lost, boiled down to its core components to be played by a single machine. But I wouldn't say one or the other is necessarily better. They're just different and beautiful in their own ways. And there wasn't any malicious intent by Bach to strip the music and plagiarize it. It was mostly for his own interest. There's a whole story about Bach's Weimar arc and the misattribution of the piece to him, to Vivaldi, and even to our different Marcello that you can explore on your own. Clearly though, there is something about the piece that caused it to persist in multiple states over the years, perhaps persistent enough to survive hundreds of more years in a distant planet. This theme of missing names and persisting beauty is relevant to the next piece of art used in the short. The poem Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley is about the transience of power. Ozymandias is the Greek name for the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II, so not even his name remains in the poem about him. The poem describes how a shattered statue and a now ironic plaque is all that remains of a great king and his empire. In a blink between lines, time and perspectives shift in both the film and the poem, starting from a narrator to a traveler, sculptor, and a king. All that survives against the tides of time is destruction and art, from a song on the piano to the legs of a statue. All of the terror of a king and his empire is long forgotten. Everything else is reduced to scrap for anyone to pick through. Our lives and the rest of the world are built on such evanescent things. The use of this poem in the short might itself become ironic, with this video only extending that irony. This short might become the plaque that survives out of Marathon and the great empire of Bungie. This has happened to Mielgo before. He made a short for Watch Dogs Legion, and that is probably the best thing to come from that game. All that remains is the art and nothing more of the source. In the future, someone can find this buried relic of a video discussing a short film made for a game long forgotten, mirroring the shifting perspectives of the poem. This is an inevitable outcome. What is uncertain is how soon this happens, so hopefully not by the end of 2025. But I'm also aware that this video is less likely to endure. In the time it took for me to analyze Marathon, everyone has already moved on for the next subject of hype and drama, for the next trending game, for the next fall of an empire, for the next video to consume. And I don't blame you. Life has become so fast and noisy that it is hard to cling on to these thoughts. Try to think deeply about your consumer habits and something will interrupt you, like a text message or an ad. But I believe we should cling on to things more and try to find a lesson to learn, even if the subject itself isn't intended to provide one. Alright, I know how some of you might feel about my analysis. This is all me projecting after being overworked, after already researching about consumerism, and after watching Spirited Away again. This video is just a bunch of random things tangential to Marathon. But also, hey, good on you for being conscious enough to criticize me. You're not a mindless consumer. I could have misinterpreted many things about the lore and the themes of Marathon, and if that's the case, feel free to share your own interpretations. Nicely. But it could also be that there is nothing to interpret. It's not that deep, bro. Especially to say all this from a game that is not out yet, from a story that's not even made yet, and from analyzing advertisements, not art. The game might be pretty, but it's a fragile hollow shell, like a porcelain doll dripped in neon. All perceived depth is just a reflection of the environment and the observer. There is nothing within to match that depth. Right? How can I say we lack depth when I'm using an advertisement to say so? Well, I believe we can still find depths in depthless things. We just need to look at the context around to fill that depth. I rather find complexity in simple things than find simplicity in complex things. Of course, Marathon was not made or remade to provide commentary about consumerism. It was made to be a product of consumerism. The first point of inception was to make an extraction shooter. Bungie liked playing Tarkov so much, they wanted to make it their own. And this kind of decision-making from Bungie lends itself to discussion about consumerism. This wasn't a product made of necessity, aside from being a video game, it is not a product made out of demand. Nobody asked for this, not Halo or Destiny fans, not extraction shooter fans, not the general gamer, and definitely not single-player fans. Marathon was made purely because Bungie thought it was a massive profit opportunity. The real production-facing problem is not manufacturing supply, but manufacturing demand. Advertisements and propaganda are used to sway the public mind into buying whatever the company wants to sell, using flashy art to get people interested in a product, no matter what it is. Though it seems that Bungie is struggling on both fronts regardless, in making people want to play the game and in creating the game in the first place. Anyways, I won't go on. I already redid this script because I was too heavy-handed about teaching consumerism. I realized that other videos exist and can teach it probably better than I could. And straight up, I'll admit that this video is still more about consumerism than it is Marathon, but is that such a bad thing to be tricked into learning? And I still do believe there is depth in Marathon. Marathon already had previous lore and was based on cyberpunk themes, but I based most of my connections on the short written and directed by Alberto Mielgo. This man won an Oscar by comparing love to windshield wipers, without ever showing them. His work is that deep. I'm praising him more than anything, definitely more than Bungie. And I do believe that we have depth. We aren't mindless consumers as evident by the pushback against Marathon. We do examine, analyze, and criticize things. We are not at the whims of every advertisement. But we should still work on slowing down and consuming less. It doesn't look like Marathon has long legs to run on, especially when it's stumbling to get to the starting line. The core to an enduring game is the gameplay. Everything else is auxiliary, like the art design. And it is a shame that the gameplay doesn't match the bold and confident identity of the art. Even if all the problems were fixed over the years, the bad press might have already done too much damage. I don't want to deter you from playing Marathon, but buying Marathon is another thing. The game will probably go free to play eventually, and with enough time, it will become more complete and refined, if it survives. Even if you want to pay to keep Marathon alive, you won't have control over where that money goes. Instead of going to artists or the devs, the money will probably go into another sports car for the CEO's collection. If you're going to burn money anyways, perhaps it will be better spent in helping someone like Anti-Real. And that is the best reason to spend, for the sake of others, supporting smaller teams or unpopular games. To be conscious and ethical consumers that can shape the market to making good things profitable. But not every good thing can be profitable, and voting with your dollar is still something that supports the core of the machine. We could try to steer the machine into a positive direction, slow down the machine, or destroy it entirely. I'll leave to you to find a solution that best interests you. I think we should deeply examine what we consume and create, and see the transience of it all. To not allow our impulses to be held against us, and think about the long-term outcomes. For all things, toys, clothes, foods, games, and YouTube videos. You know, if it's worth it, how long it will last, what can I gain from it, if this bit of drama will be relevant within a year, a month, a day. I am guilty of this. This video was about praising the art of Marathon, and in the time I spent working on the script, the consensus of the art has turned. I have stopped for too long to examine things, but I don't regret it as I have gained more insight. In what some might see as an ad, I saw more and learned more. Within hollow things, we can fill it with our own depths. I did all of this. I studied psychology, consumerism, music, and poetry because of one advertisement that moved me. It made me do everything but buy Marathon. Imagine how much insight we can gain if we engage with everything like this. Films, games, ads, YouTube videos. Gain more through less by slowing down to digest, taste, and analyze things. But wisdom is not enough. We need to enact on it too. Knowing is half the battle. Actually, who said that? Was that Sun Tzu? Oh, it's a quote from a toy ad. Anyways, we should do things because they are justified rather than justify the things we do. Find harmony upon conflict by either changing our values or ourselves. Either option that helps us improve. So if we want to spend less, then we shouldn't buy the new game being hyped up. If it's good, then it'll be around later. We should play a game from our backlog instead. We bought that game for a reason. Engage with it deeply and find some inspiration out of it. Don't consume art. Let art consume you. Come out of it to think and act on what you truly need.